She's been on the job for slightly more than a month, and this week her report on the estimated cost of the gas plant cancellations has sent shockwaves through Queen's Park. Joining us now for more on her report, Bonnie Lysyk. She is Ontario's new Auditor General, and we welcome you not just to TVO, but also to the province of Ontario.
Thank you very much.
Well, how did you come to the conclusion that relocating the Oakville gas plant to Napanee was going to cost way more than we had previously been led to believe?
There's a team in the office, a lot of people in the office that have done work at OPA and the Ministry of Energy, and they accumulated information, and there's a methodology that's been used to tabulate that number and put the numbers together, wrote the report, and here we are today.
And here we are today. I want to put up a graphic here because, of course, this story has been around for at least a couple of years right now, and the numbers have been wildly divergent. We see the numbers in red, which is what the Liberal government has told us this cancellation was going to cost. And then we see numbers from the Ontario Power Authority, which are next to those. And then we see your numbers out of the Auditor General's office, the cancellations of Oakville and Mississauga, and the numbers are all wildly divergent. Why is that?
Well, our numbers, I can speak to our numbers. Our numbers are based on the work that we did with the most recent information. There are differences between our numbers and the April 30th number produced by the Ontario Power Authority as a result of two different assumptions. One, in-service dates for the plants, both Napanee and Oakville, and the second difference is the discount rate that was used in reaching our number 675 and theirs 310.
I know Auditors General, whatever, are loath to kind of, you're all about the numbers and you're loath to impugn political motive, and I get all that, so I'm not trying to trap you up on anything here. However, when you look at what the Liberal numbers suggested and you look at what the numbers are that you found, what conclusions do you come to?
You know, I can't speak to how the number was derived and what people knew at the time those numbers were communicated. I do know, though, that you know, based on the information we used and we had available to us, that I'm very comfortable that our 675 estimate accurately represents the cost associated with the replacement of Oakville, cancellation of Oakville, and the building of the Napanee plant.
$675 million, which is a long way from $40 million.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know it's correct. I just can't, I mean, we're all trying to figure out how the numbers could be so different.
The 40 million, we do have the 40 million reflected in our $675 million number. It relates specifically to sunk costs. So I believe that's what was referred to when it was communicated, but there are additional costs beyond that, obviously.
Sunk costs meaning?
Meaning TransCanada Energy had spent a certain amount of money leading up to the cancellation of the plant, and so that was one component. A second component that they had spent money on that would be the turbines. Those are the hard costs, the turbines and these other sunk costs.
When you discovered, as you were doing your audit, that TransCanada Energy was going to be compensated by the Liberal government for the total amount of the contract, even though the contract stated the government was under no obligation to do so, what did you conclude from that?
Well, the contract had a couple clauses that I think were pertinent to think about here. One, you know, TransCanada Energy was responsible for obtaining the permits and the approvals from the municipality of Oakville, and they were unsuccessful in doing that. The other clauses are, there's a force majeure clause in the contract, and there's a force majeure, meaning if both parties had that clause applicable to them, meaning if something happened out of their control, they could walk away from the contract. And the third type of clause is a discriminatory action clause, which meant certain things had to happen before TransCanada Energy was entitled to their lost profits.
But let's be clear here. Did the government do anything illegal?
During the course of our audit, we didn't find any evidence that there was anything illegal done.
Did the government do anything unethical?
You know, again, I can't comment on the judgments that were made going into, you know, having us put out a number like this. I think I'd just like to say that, you know, we based that number and our estimate and our work on the information we had available. So who had what information available at what time? I'd be guessing if I suggested I knew.
Okay, well that's interesting. So you're saying that it's possible that the government lowballed the number in the past because at that time they had incomplete information that you in subsequent months had access to.
The 675 is an estimate based on current information that we had available. It's an estimate because 2/3 of the costs are based on things to happen in the future. So there is a possibility that the 675 could go higher. We do know the $140 million that we've also indicated in the report with respect to tolls is something that will occur in the future. Whether the $140 million will be higher or slightly lower, time will tell.
Was it part of your mandate to look into whether or not the government lied to the people about those cost estimates?
Our mandate was to quantify the costs associated with the cancellation of Oakville and just identify some of the decisions leading up to that. That was not part of our mandate.
So their public utterances in the past on this were not things that you looked at?
No, that's correct.
Okay. One of the defenses that the government is introducing here is that, and I guess we should explain, all of this happened on Dalton McGuinty's watch. Kathleen Wynne is now the premier. If I can put it colloquially, she is trying to, in some respects, clean up a mess that was not, I was going to say not entirely of her doing, but some might say not at all of her doing. Some might say partially of her doing. That's another issue for the next conversation I'm going to have. Part of their position has been, lawyers advised us to settle this and make it go away, because if we didn't, lawsuits would ensue, and once you get into the realm of lawsuits, you never know how much it's going to cost. Could cost more, could cost less, who knows? Mm-hmm. Did you find that an appropriate argument?
Well, I think it depends. You know, at the beginning of the day when a decision is made to cancel a contract, I think the parties, have a responsibility to look at what happens when you do a cancellation. So we do know that there were protections in the contract, both for Ontario Power Authority as well as TransCanada Energy. And the steps that were taken to make that final decision of canceling the plant and then actually in writing committing that profits would be paid back to TransCanada Energy are decisions that affected the outcome. And the outcome is that the $675 million estimate of additional costs from those decisions. So I guess what I'd say is, with respect to contracts, the important part is before you actually move on a contract, understand the provisions that are there to protect you and make a decision that doesn't lock you into having to pay money out in the end, because there was correspondence that committed paying of profits to TransCanada Energy.
No, I hear you, but that contingency was provided for in this contract, was it not? I mean, the government had some protection in there to prevent what happened from happening.
That's correct. What as an example, if Oakville had continued fighting the plant and had been successful in dragging out their fight for 24 months, for a period of time, if the plant hadn't been able to be constructed and in service by its original date, then the contract would have, there would be 24 months past that, and the contract would say that both parties could walk away from it. So again, if the plant wasn't in service within 24 months of the original in-service date, both parties could walk away and not have to pay anything. So given Oakville's opposition, there's a high probability that that could have been the case.
Let's remember that the reason that these plants were sited in Oakville and Mississauga, and I appreciate only Oakville was part of your mandate, not Mississauga, but these plants were sited there because the idea is it's cheaper to serve populations with energy when the power is close to the user. Mm-hmm. That's not going to be the case now. The plants are going to be constructed very far away from the end users. So we're presumably going to have to pay a lot more for that power than we otherwise would have. How much more? Do you know?
Well, again, the Napanee plant, Ontario Power Authority assumed responsibility for gas distribution, for additional transmission lines being built in, for line losses. So, and as an example, the $675 million will have to be recouped from ratepayers as a result of locating Napanee outside of the Southwest GTA and, at the distance it is.
We do know that. Do you have any idea how much more?
And on a per person basis, I can't say on a per person basis. Overall, the whole 675 will factor into the rate setting models that are used.
You were the Auditor General for Saskatchewan?
That's correct.
You were the Deputy Auditor General in the province of Manitoba?
That is correct.
Have you, in your travels, ever investigated or seen, gotta be careful here, but let's, as egregious a public expenditure as what has transpired here?
You know, I've conducted a lot of audits and a lot, in a lot of different situations, seen different results. I would say, in terms of dollars, this is a lot of money. So this would be one of the files where I've seen, where the money result of the decisions in terms of a loss to ratepayers is huge.
Wait a sec. Are you in Saskatchewan and Manitoba? Did you see anything that was bigger than $1 billion blown out the door?
I would have to say no.
You would have to say no. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Last question here. What's it like taking up this new post in the midst of a media frenzy, the likes of which we haven't seen here, and you may probably have never seen before?
It's been interesting. I mean, I can understand why it's an important report for the people of the province and for the members of the Legislative Assembly, and I hope that when they read it, that we've provided them with the information that on a go-forward basis, good decisions and good changes can be put in place. I do know that there are changes being planned, and that was positive to hear when the Premier put out her announcement.
Well, we had your predecessor, Jim McCarter, on this program many times, and Bonnie Lysyk, the new Auditor General of Ontario. We look forward to your future visits here as well. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Well, thank you very much.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.